Admiral Kekstar looked at the small blue planet through the viewing screen of his massive warship. The world looked peaceful from space. White clouds moved slowly over green and brown land. Blue oceans covered most of the surface. It reminded him of his home world before the Empire had taken it 300 years ago. This was the 48th world that Kekstar would bring under Empire control. The process was always the same. Show up with enough ships to block out the sun. Give the natives 3 days to surrender. If they said yes, make them slaves. If they said no, kill them all and take the planet anyway. The humans of this world called it Earth. They had only learned to travel between stars 50 years ago. Their ships were slow and weak. Their weapons were simple metal and fire. They had no shields, no energy guns, no way to fight back against the Empire's great fleet. Kekstar felt almost sorry for them. His communications officer, thin alien with 4 arms, looked up from his station. Admiral, we are in position. 40 ships are ready to begin the standard procedure. Begin the transmission, Kekstar ordered. The message went out on every frequency the humans used. Radio, television, internet, military channels. Every device that could receive a signal suddenly carried the same words in perfect human English. People of Earth. This is Admiral Kekstar of the 4th Battle Fleet of the Galactic Empire.
Your
World is now under our control. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Lay down all weapons. Gather in your major cities. Prepare to serve the Empire. If you resist, we will destroy your world and everyone on it. This is your only warning. On Earth, every television screen, every computer, every phone showed the same image. A tall, gray-skinned alien in a black uniform stood on the bridge of a ship that looked like a floating city. Behind him, the darkness of space was filled with more ships than most humans could count. President Jake Morrison was in a meeting with his cabinet when the message came. The 70-year-old leader had gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was steady when he spoke to his advisors. How many ships? He asked General Pete Collins, the head of Earth's military.
Our
Best count is 40 large vessels, sir. Each one is bigger than our largest city. We have 12 ships in our entire space fleet. They have weapons we don't understand and armor we can't break. Secretary of Defense Linda Hayes leaned forward in her chair. Mr. President, we need to consider our options. We're talking about the survival of our entire species. Dr. Lisa Grant, Earth's top scientist who studied alien life, had been quiet during the meeting. Now she stood up and walked to the window that looked out over Washington, D.C. The city looked normal. People were walking on sidewalks. Cars moved through streets. Children played in parks. They've done this before, she said without turning around. I've been studying their transmission. The way they talk, the words they use. This is a script. They've given this same speech to dozens of worlds. What happened to those worlds? Morrison asked. Lisa finally turned to face the room. Some surrendered. It became slave worlds, mining planets, factory worlds. Their people work for the Empire until they die. Some fought back. She paused. Those worlds are empty now. Dead rocks floating in space. The room was quiet for a long moment. General Collins cleared his throat. Sir, we have to be realistic. Can't win a war against them. Our best weapons are like throwing rocks at a tank. Maybe, Morrison said, but we're Americans. Our whole country started because we didn't like being told what to do by an empire. He looked around the room. We're not just Americans now. We're humans. All of us. Every person on this planet. Within hours, the president was on every screen in the world, not just American screens. Every television, every computer, every device, in every country showed Jake Morrison standing behind a podium with the flags of every nation on Earth behind him. My fellow humans, he began. Today we learned that we are not alone in the universe. We also learned that our new neighbors are not friendly. They want us to surrender. They want us to become their slaves. They think we will be afraid. Morrison looked directly into the camera. His voice was calm but strong. They're wrong. Yes, we are a young species. Yes, our technology is not as advanced as theirs. Yes, they have bigger guns and more ships. They made one very big mistake. They assume we think like them. They assume we will choose slavery over death. They don't understand what it means to be human. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing to listen. We have been fighting bullies for thousands of years. We fought kings who said they owned us. We fought dictators who said they knew what was best for us. We fought anyone who said we had no choice but to obey. Sometimes we lost, sometimes we died, but we never stopped fighting, never stopped saying no to anyone who tried to make us less than free. In military bases around the world, soldiers watched their president speak. I know we cannot win this fight with guns and ships. We can win it by being who we are. We are the species that looked at a mountain and said we would climb it. We are the people who looked at an ocean and said we would cross it. We are the race that looked at the sky and said we would fly. In laboratories and universities, scientists worked frantically to understand the alien technology. They give us 3 days to surrender. They think that's enough time for us to realize we have no hope. But they don't understand hope. Hope is not about having the best weapons or the strongest army. Hope is about refusing to give up even when everything looks impossible. Captain Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, humanity's newest warship. It was small compared to the alien vessels, but it was home to 200 humans who had volunteered to fight, even though they knew they would probably die. Sir, his communications officer said, we're getting volunteers faster than we can. Process them. Every military base on Earth is overflowing. People are lining up for hundreds of miles. Blake nodded. He had expected this. When humans were told they couldn't do something, they usually tried to prove everyone wrong. Dr. Grant was working in her laboratory beneath the Pentagon. She had pieces of alien technology that had fallen from their ships. Nothing big, just small fragments. But even these tiny pieces were far beyond anything humans had built. She studied the metal under powerful microscopes. She ran electrical current through the circuits. She analyzed the energy readings. Slowly, very slowly, she began to understand how the alien machines worked. They're not magic, she said to her team. They're just science we haven't learned yet. But science can be copied. Science can be improved. Science can be turned against the people who made it. The 72 hours were almost over. Admiral Kekstar expected to receive Earth's surrender soon. Every species in the galaxy had either surrendered or been destroyed. There was no third option. His communications officer looked puzzled. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it on screen. President Morrison appeared on the viewing screen. He was standing in the same room where he had spoken to Earth. But now, there were no flags behind him. Instead, there were windows showing the night sky. Stars were visible in the darkness. Somewhere among those stars were the ships that wanted to destroy Earth. Morrison looked tired but not afraid. He spoke in a quiet voice that somehow carried more weight than any shout. Admiral Kekstar. This is Jake Morrison, President of the United States, an elected representative of the human race. I have consulted with the leaders of every nation on Earth. I have spoken with our military commanders. I have listened to our scientists and our philosophers and our teachers and our children. Kekstar leaned forward in his chair. We have reached a decision regarding your ultimatum. Our answer is no. The alien admiral blinked in surprise. In 47 previous conquests, no species had ever simply said no without conditions or negotiations. Furthermore, Morrison continued, we want you to know that we understand what you are. You are not explorers or traders or even conquerors. You are bullies. You are the biggest kid in the playground who takes everyone's lunch money. Well, we have news for you. Humans don't give up their lunch money. Morrison stepped closer to the camera. You can destroy our cities. You can kill millions of us. You might even win. But you will never make us kneel. That's not who we are. Bring your weapons. Bring your armies. Bring everything you have. We'll be waiting. The transmission ended, for the first time in 300 years of service to the Empire. Admiral Kekstar felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. Admiral Kekstar stared at the empty screen where President Morrison had been. In 47 conquests, no species had ever simply said no. They begged. They offered deals. They asked for more time. They never just refused and walked away. Admiral, his weapons officer said, What are your orders? Kekstar thought for a moment. The Empire had rules for this situation. If a species refused to surrender, they were to be completely destroyed. No survivors. No second chances. Begin. Orbital bombardment. Target their major cities first. We will show them the cost of defiance. The Empire's ships moved into position above Earth. Energy weapons that could melt mountains began to charge. In minutes, every major city on the planet would be turned to ash. But something unexpected happened. Dr. Lisa Grant had spent the last 3 days doing more than just studying alien technology. She had been preparing for this moment. As the first energy beams shot down from space, emergency broadcasts went out across the planet. This is Dr. Grant to all emergency stations. Operation Scatter begins now. Pete, Operation Scatter is active. Around the world, millions of people had been quietly moving, not running in panic, but following carefully planned routes. Underground tunnels that had been built for subway systems suddenly became highways leading out of the cities. Mine shafts became underground cities. Ocean platforms that were supposed to be research stations became floating towns. The alien weapons hit New York City at exactly noon. The massive towers of Manhattan melted like ice cream in the sun. But the city was not full of people. Most had already moved into the subway tunnels and sewers and basement levels that went down for miles under the ground. London burned next, then Tokyo, then Moscow. One by one, the great cities of Earth were turned into smoking craters. From space, it looked like the planet was dying. Admiral Kekstar watched the destruction with satisfaction. This was how it always went. Show the natives what the Empire could do, and the survivors would beg for mercy. He waited for the surrender message. It never came. Instead, something else happened. Reports started coming in from his landing parties. The Empire had sent down 10,000 soldiers to take control of what was left, expected to find broken humans ready to serve their new masters. What they found was a nightmare, Captain. Ryan Blake had been right about one thing. The humans could not win a direct fight against the Empire's army. But they were not fighting a direct fight. In what had been New York, Empire soldiers moved through the burning ruins looking for survivors. The tunnels under the city should have been empty. Instead, they were full of traps. Sergeant Vex, a battle-tested Empire warrior, led his squad through what had been a shopping mall. The building was mostly destroyed, but the lower levels were still intact. They were looking for humans to capture as examples. The first sign of trouble was the silence. There were no screams, no crying, no sounds of a defeated people. Just quiet then. The lights went out. In the darkness, Empire soldiers heard sounds they did not recognize. Footsteps that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Voices whispering in languages they could not understand. The sound of metal scraping against stone. When the emergency lights came on, 3 of Vex's soldiers were gone. "Where are they?" Vex demanded, speaking into his communicator. No answer. 2 hours later, only Vex was left alive. He never saw who was hunting his squad. He never heard them coming. One by one, his soldiers just disappeared in the darkness. When he finally found a way out of the tunnels, he was shaking with fear. In his report to Admiral Kekstar, he wrote, "The humans are not acting like a defeated species. They are acting like predators." Similar reports came from every landing site. Empire soldiers, trained to fight against organized armies, found themselves fighting against ghosts. Humans appeared out of nowhere, struck fast, and vanished before the aliens could. Fight Back engineer Paul Davis had turned every human settlement into a weapon. Shopping centers became fortresses with hidden passages between stores. Parking garages became mazes with dead ends that led to ambush points. Even playgrounds became dangerous, with slides that led to underground bunkers and swings that hid sniper positions. The Empire had superior technology, but they were fighting in a world designed by humans for humans. Every street, every building, every tunnel was now part of a massive trap. Dr. Grant was no longer in her laboratory under the Pentagon. The Pentagon was gone, turned to melted metal by alien weapons. But Grant was very much alive, working in a hidden facility built inside an old mountain in Colorado. She had been studying the pieces of alien technology for months now. More importantly, she had been studying the aliens themselves. Every transmission, every communication, every order from their ships was being recorded and analyzed. "They're not as united as they pretend to be," she told President Morrison during a secret video call. Morrison was also in hiding, moving between safe houses that had been built in old mine shafts across the country. "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. Grant held up a translation device she had built using alien parts. "I've been listening to their private communications. The species and their empire are not all willing partners. Some of them were conquered just like they're trying to conquer us." This was important information. If some of the Empire's own people were not happy, maybe they could be turned against their masters. Captain Blake had moved his remaining ships to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The Empire thought he was running away. They were wrong. Blake was building, using mining equipment and human creativity. His crews were turning asteroids into weapons. They took rocks the size of buildings and put engines on them. They loaded them with nuclear bombs. They covered them with metal plates taken from destroyed human ships. The result was something the Empire had never seen. Asteroid ships that looked like flying mountains but fought like wasps. "How many do we have ready?" Blake asked his chief engineer, Lieutenant Kate Miller. 17 so far, sir. We're working on more, but we need more materials." Blake smiled grimly. "We'll get materials. The Empire has plenty of ships. We just need to take them." Back on Earth, the war was not going as Admiral Kextar had expected. His reports to the Empire leadership grew more desperate each week. "The humans refused to surrender," he wrote. "They have gone underground like insects. Every building is a fortress. Every tunnel is a trap. We control the surface, but they control everything below ground. Even worse, the humans were learning. Every Empire weapon they captured was quickly copied. Every dead Empire soldier provided equipment that was studied and improved. Dr. Grant's teams had learned to make their own energy weapons using alien technology. They were not as powerful as the originals, but they worked. More importantly, the humans were making them faster than the Empire could destroy them. The most frightening thing for Kextar was what happened to his prisoners. The Empire always took prisoners to use as examples. When other species saw their people being tortured or killed, they usually surrendered quickly. But when Empire forces captured humans, something different happened. Other humans came to rescue them. Not just soldiers, but ordinary people. Teachers, farmers, store clerks, children. They attacked Empire positions with whatever weapons they could find, even when the rescues failed, even when the humans died. Trying more kept coming. The Empire had never fought a species where everyone was a soldier. 6 months after the bombing began, Admiral Kextar was forced to admit something he had never thought possible. The Empire was losing. "They fight like they have nothing to lose," he reported to his superiors. "They don't fear death. They don't protect their young by surrendering. They protect their young by fighting harder." The Empire's response was swift and harsh. If the Fourth Battle Fleet could not conquer one primitive world, then the First Imperial Fleet would be sent to finish the job, 20 times larger than Kextar's force. The First Imperial Fleet had never been defeated. Their orders were simple: kill every human in the galaxy. But as the massive fleet prepared to jump to the Sol system, they received an unexpected message. It was being broadcast on every frequency in the Empire, reaching every world, every ship, every communication device. The message was from President Morrison, speaking from his hidden location on Earth. "People of the galaxy," he said, "my name is Jake Morrison. I represent a small world that refused to kneel to your empire. They told us we were alone. Told us resistance was impossible. They were wrong. The first time in 3,000 years, the enslaved worlds of the Empire heard something they thought was gone forever. They heard hope." President Morrison's message spread through the galaxy faster than the Empire could stop it. On world after world, beings who had lived as slaves for generations heard something they had almost forgotten: the sound of defiance. The message was simple. Morrison spoke in basic Galactic Common, the language used for trade between worlds. His words were not fancy or complicated. They were the words of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. "We know you're out there," Morrison said from his hidden bunker deep under the Colorado mountains. "We know you're listening. The Empire thinks they control your communications, but they're wrong. We learned how to use their own systems against them." Dr. Grant had made this possible. Her teams had cracked the Empire's communication codes using captured alien equipment. Now every transmission the humans sent was being repeated by the Empire's own relay stations across the galaxy. "My world is burning," Morrison continued. "Our cities are gone. Millions of our people are dead. The Empire thinks this means they have one, but they don't understand what it means to be free. When free people are attacked, they don't surrender. They fight back. And when they can't fight back alone, they find others to fight with them." On the mining world of Cathara, workers deep underground heard Morrison's words through their communicators. They had been slaves to the Empire for 200 years. Their people mined rare metals that were shipped to build Empire warships. In return, they were given just enough food to stay alive. The Overseer, a cruel Empire officer named Texel, tried to shut off the communication system. But the workers had been listening. For the first time in decades, they looked at each other with something new in their eyes. Hope, the uprising on Cathara, began 3 hours after Morrison's broadcast ended. The workers had no weapons except their mining tools. But mining tools could break rocks, and they could break Empire soldiers too. Similar revolts began on 12 worlds at the same time. The Empire had kept these worlds isolated from each other. Each planet thought they were alone in their suffering. Morrison's message showed them they were part of something bigger. The Empire's response was swift and brutal. Admiral Vorthok, commander of the Internal Security Fleet, received orders to crush all rebellions immediately. No mercy was to be shown, but there was a problem. The Internal Security Fleet was designed to handle small uprisings on 1 or 2 worlds. They were not prepared for galaxy-wide revolution. On Earth, Captain Blake received the news through captured Empire communications. Asteroid fleet had grown to 50 ships now, hiding in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Each ship was a flying rock the size of a city block, armed with nuclear weapons and crewed by humans who had watched their world burn. "Sir," Lieutenant Miller reported, "we're getting messages from rebel groups across the galaxy. They're asking for help." Blake studied the star charts on his command screen. The distances were enormous. Even with faster-than-light travel, it would take weeks to reach the nearest rebel world. But maybe that was not the point. "Send a message to all rebel worlds," Blake ordered. "Tell them Earth stands with them. Tell them we're coming." A lie. Blake's ships could not save distant worlds from the Empire's revenge. But sometimes a lie that gave people courage was more powerful than any weapon. Dr. Grant had been busy too. Her hidden laboratory was now connected to similar facilities around the world, through underground cables that the Empire could not detect. Human scientists, engineers, and hackers worked together to cause problems for their enemies. The Empire's greatest weakness was their size. Thousands of worlds and millions of ships, they needed massive computer systems to keep everything organized. Every ship, every supply convoy, every military unit was tracked by central computers. Grant's teams had learned how to break into these systems. "We can't destroy their fleet," Grant explained to Morrison during one of their secret video calls. "But we can make them confused. We can send their supply ships to the wrong places. We can give their admirals false information. We can make them fight each other instead of us." The first major success came when Grant's hackers convinced the Empire's computers that Admiral Kekstar's fleet was actually a rebel force. For 6 hours, other Empire ships attacked Kekstar's vessels before the mistake was discovered. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Karen White had been doing something even more important. Hidden in a bunker under what had been Chicago, she was listening to Empire communications and learning their secrets. White had been a language expert before the war. Now she used her skills to understand not just what the Empire was saying, but what they were not saying. She listened to the fear in their voices when they reported about human attacks. She heard the confusion when they tried to explain why their plans were failing. Most importantly, she heard the arguments. "They're fighting among themselves," White reported to Dr. Grant. "The different alien species in their empire don't trust each other. Some think humans should be completely destroyed. Others think they should try to make a deal with us. This gave Grant an idea that was both brilliant and dangerous. What if we make their arguments worse? Grant suggested. What if we make them so busy fighting each other that they forget about us? It was a risky plan. But humans had already lost everything they could lose. Risk was all they had left. Grant's teams began sending false messages between Empire fleets. They made it look like Admiral Kekstar was planning to rebel against his superiors. They made it appear that the internal security fleet was planning to take over colony worlds for themselves. The Empire had ruled for 3,000 years through fear and control. But fear and control only worked when everyone believed in them. Once doubt began to spread, it grew like a disease. The first Imperial fleet was still on its way to Earth. 800 ships led by Grand Admiral Zethel, most feared military leader in the galaxy. His orders were to destroy every human in existence. But as his fleet traveled through space, Zethal received disturbing reports. Rebel uprisings were spreading faster than they could be stopped. Some Empire worlds were declaring independence. Others were joining together to resist the internal security fleet. Worst of all, there were reports that humans were no longer just fighting on Earth. Human ships had been seen near rebel worlds, helping with attacks on Empire forces. Somehow, the primitive species that should have been crushed months ago was spreading across the galaxy. Captain Blake's asteroid ships had indeed left the Sol system. Not all 50 of them, but enough to make the Empire nervous. They moved in. Small groups, jumping from system to system, never staying long enough to be caught. Blake's ships could not win battles against Empire fleets. But they could do something else. They could rescue people. When the Empire attacked rebel worlds, Blake's crews would slip in during the fighting and evacuate as many civilians as possible. They could not save everyone, but they saved enough to make the Empire's victory feel hollow. More importantly, they brought news. News that Earth still existed. News that humans were still fighting. News that the Empire could be beaten. The effect was like throwing oil on a fire. Every world that heard about human resistance became more willing to resist themselves. On the agricultural world of Nerdica, farmers who had grown food for the Empire for centuries suddenly realized they had power. If they stopped working, Empire worlds would go hungry. The revolt began when they burned their crops instead of shipping them. On the factory world of Morthex, workers who built Empire weapons turned their tools against their overseers. They used industrial machinery to build their own ships and weapons. On the research world of Kylanara, our scientists who had created new technologies for the Empire began sharing their knowledge with rebel groups instead. Each new rebellion made the next one easier. The Empire was like a giant machine that was breaking down one piece at a time. Grand Admiral Zethel finally reached the Sol system with his massive fleet. He expected to find a broken world ready for final destruction. Instead, he found something that made him pause in surprise. Earth was surrounded by ships. Not just human ships, but vessels from a dozen different worlds. Rebels who had come to help defend the planet that had inspired their own freedom. The final battle was about to begin. But it would not be the easy victory the Empire had expected. Grand Admiral Zethel stared at the impossible sight before him. The Sol system should have been empty except for a few dying humans on a burned planet. Instead, space around Earth was filled with hundreds of ships from dozens of different worlds. Ow! Is this possible? He demanded from his bridge crew. His intelligence officer, a nervous alien with 6 eyes, checked his reports again. Sir, our information was that Earth was isolated. We destroyed their major cities. We eliminated their space fleet. Then explain those ships? Zethel pointed at the viewing screen. The rebellion fleet was a strange mixture. Human asteroid ships that looked like flying rocks floated next to sleek vessels from the mining world of Cathara. Converted cargo ships from agricultural planets flew beside warships stolen from Empire bases. It was not a proper military fleet. It was a collection of angry beings who had decided they would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Captain Blake stood on the bridge of his flagship, a converted asteroid he had named New York's Revenge. Around him, communication screens showed the faces of rebel leaders from across the galaxy. This is Blake to all rebel forces, he said calmly. The Empire's first fleet has arrived. 800 ships against our 300. They have better weapons and stronger armor. But we have something they don't have. What's that? Asked Captain Nalara, a former Empire officer who had joined the rebellion after her homeworld was destroyed for refusing to pay higher taxes. Blake smiled grimly. And we have nothing left to lose. The Empire had rules for space battles. Ships formed neat lines. Commanders gave careful orders. Battles followed patterns that had worked for 3,000 years. The rebels ignored all the rules. Instead of forming battle lines, they scattered in all directions. Small ships hid behind asteroids and moons. Large ships charged straight at the Empire fleet with no regard for their own safety. Some rebel vessels were loaded with nothing but explosives. Piloted by volunteers who planned to ram Empire ships, Zethel had fought many battles. But he had never seen anything like this. They're not fighting like a fleet, his tactical officer reported. They're fighting like individual warriors. Each ship is making its own decisions. This created a problem for the Empire. Their battle computers were designed to fight against organized enemies. When the rebels scattered and attacked from every direction at once, the computers could not keep track of all the threats. The first Empire ship to die was the dreadnought Eternal Glory. A human asteroid ship loaded with nuclear weapons crashed into it at full speed. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from Earth's surface, but the Empire had 800 ships. Even losing 10 or 20 would not change the outcome of the battle. Dr. Grant was not watching the space battle. She was in her underground laboratory, working on humanity's last desperate plan. For months, her teams had been studying every piece of Empire technology they could find. They had learned something important. All Empire ships, all Empire bases, all Empire communication systems were connected to a single, massive computer network. This network controlled everything from weapon systems to life support. It was supposed to be impossible to break into from the outside, but Grant's teams were not trying to break in from the outside. Lieutenant Karen White had been captured 3 weeks earlier during a raid on an Empire communication station. The Empire thought they had taken a prisoner. They were wrong. White was a virus. Hidden in her body were microscopic machines that Dr. Grant's teams had built using alien technology. When the Empire connected White to their interrogation computers, the machines began to spread through their network. How long until the virus reaches all their systems? Grant asked her chief programmer, a young man named Bobby Chen, who had been a computer hacker before the war. Hard to say, Chen replied, watching code scroll across his screen. The Empire's network is huge, but the virus is designed to copy itself every time it finds a new computer. It should spread faster and faster. In space, the battle was not going well for the rebels. They had destroyed 30 Empire ships, but they had lost over 100 of their own. Captain Blake's fleet was brave, but bravery could not make up for the difference in firepower. Sir Lieutenant Miller reported, "We're down to 200 ships. The Empire still has over 700. Blake nodded. He had known this would happen. The space battle was not meant to be won. It was meant to buy time for Dr. Grant's plan to work on Earth. President Morrison was in the deepest bunker humans had ever built, 2 miles under the Rocky Mountains. With him were the leaders of every nation on the planet. They watched the battle through stolen Empire cameras and waited. "How much longer can Blake hold them?" asked Prime Minister Helen Ward, the leader of what was left of Britain. "Not long," Morrison replied. "Maybe an hour. Maybe 2. And if Grant's plan doesn't work?" Morrison looked at the other leaders. These were people who had watched their countries burn, their cities turn to ash, their people die by the millions. But they had not given up. They had not surrendered. "We fight them on the ground," Morrison said simply. "We make them pay for every inch of our world. We make sure that even if they win, they remember the cost." The virus reached Grand Admiral Zethel's flagship exactly 57 minutes after the battle began. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The ship's computers continued to work normally. Weapons fired, shields held. Navigation systems functioned perfectly. Then small things began to go wrong. The targeting computer locked onto an Empire ship instead of a Rebel vessel. A communications array started broadcasting Rebel messages instead of Empire orders. A life support system briefly shut down before restarting. Zethel's crew thought these were random malfunctions caused by battle damage. They were wrong. Grant's virus was not designed to destroy Empire computers. No. It was designed to turn them against their users. Every system that kept the Empire's ships working was slowly being reprogrammed. The first sign of real trouble came when the Empire, ship destroyer of worlds, suddenly opened fire on its own fleet. Its weapons officer screamed that he was not controlling the guns. But the ship's computers ignored his commands. Within minutes, other Empire ships began attacking each other. Not all of them, but enough to create chaos. Fleet formations broke apart as captains tried to avoid friendly fire. Command and control systems failed as infected computers sent false orders. Captain Blake saw what was happening and immediately understood. All Rebel forces, he broadcast, Dr. Grant's gift is working. The Empire's computers are turning against them. Press the attack now while they're confused. The remaining Rebel ships charged into the Empire fleet. Oh, but they were not fighting 800 organized warships anymore. They were fighting smaller groups of ships that could not communicate properly with each other. Grant. Admiral Zethel tried to regain control of his fleet, but it was impossible. The virus had spread too. Every ship threw their communication links. His tactical displays showed false information. His orders were being changed by infected computers before they reached other ships. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it on screen. President Morrison appeared on the viewing screen. He was still in his underground bunker, but he looked calm and confident. Grand Admiral Zethel, Morrison said, "This is Jake Morrison, President of Earth. I want to make you an offer." Zethel was so surprised he actually answered, "What kind of offer?" "Surrender now, and we'll let you and your crews live. Let's continue this battle, and we'll turn every computer in your empire against you. Your choice." Around the Grand Admiral. His bridge crew watched their instruments fail one by one. Warning lights flashed as ship systems began to shut down. The virus was spreading faster now, infecting more systems every minute. For the first time in his long military career, Grand Admiral Zethel realized he was going to lose a battle, but the Empire had one last weapon, something that even the human virus could not touch. The Genesis Protocol. A weapon that could destroy entire star systems, and Emperor Vextel himself was bringing it to Earth. Emperor Vextel's ship appeared at the edge of the Sol system like a dark moon. The Imperial throne was not just a warship, it was a mobile palace the size of a small city, carrying the most powerful weapon the Empire had ever built, the Genesis. Protocol could make a star explode. When a star died, everything in the system died with it. Planets, moons, space stations, fleets, everything would be turned to ash and radiation. Vextel had ruled the Empire for 800 years. He had conquered 1,000 worlds and destroyed species that dared to resist him. But he had never faced anything like the humans of Earth. "Report," he commanded as he entered his throne room. The chamber was vast and dark, lit only by screens showing the chaos in the Sol system. "The First Fleet has been compromised," my Emperor, Admiral Tuxara, reported nervously. "The humans have infected our computer systems with some kind of virus. Our ships are attacking each other." Vextel looked at the screens. He could see Empire vessels firing on their own allies, while Rebel ships darted between them like angry insects. It was madness. "How many rebels are there?" he asked. "Approximately 200 ships remaining, Emperor. But they are fighting alongside defectors from our own forces." This was the part that truly angered Vexel. The Empire had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Rebellions were quickly crushed. Defectors were executed as examples. Somehow, these humans had inspired beings across the galaxy to throw away their lives for an idea. Freedom. "Prepare the Genesis Protocol," Vexel ordered. "We will end this here and now." On Earth, Dr. Grant detected the massive energy buildup from the Emperor's ship immediately. Her instruments had never recorded anything like it. "Morrison," she called the President on their secure line. we have a problem. Emperor has some kind of weapon that's charging up. The energy readings are off the charts. President Morrison was still in his underground bunker with the other world leaders. They had been celebrating the success of the virus attacked, but Grant's news changed everything. What kind of weapon? Morrison asked. I don't know exactly, but based on the energy signature, I think it can destroy the entire solar system. The bunker fell silent. After everything they had survived, after all the battles and sacrifices, it might all end anyway. How long do we have? Morrison asked. The weapon takes time to charge. Maybe 6 hours. Morrison looked around at the other leaders. They had led their people through the darkest time in human history. Now they faced the final test. Then we have 6 hours to stop him, Morrison said simply. Captain Blake received the same information aboard his asteroid ship. Around him, the space battle was winding down as more Empire vessels fell victim to the virus. But the Emperor's massive ship was too far away for the rebels to reach in time. Sir, Lieutenant Miller said, even if we could get there, our weapons can't damage something that big. Blake studied his tactical display. Miller was right. The Imperial throne was protected by shields that could stop anything the rebels had. But maybe they didn't need to destroy it. Get me a communication channel to all rebel forces, Blake ordered. Within minutes, Blake was speaking to every ship in the system. Humans, aliens, defectors, rebels. They were all listening. This is Blake to all forces. The Emperor has a weapon that can kill our entire system. We can't destroy his ship, but we might not need to. Dr. Grant, are you listening? I'm here, Blake. Can your virus reach the Emperor's ship? There was a pause as Grant checked her computers. It's possible. But we'd need a direct connection to their systems. Someone would have to get close enough to physically link our computers to theirs. How close? Close enough to touch. Blake smiled grimly. I think I know someone crazy enough to try that. Lieutenant Karen White had been rescued during the confusion of the space battle. The Empire had released her when their ships started malfunctioning, thinking she was just another prisoner. They had no idea she was the reason their computers were failing. Now, White sat in the pilot's seat of the smallest ship in Blake's fleet. It was barely larger than a fighter, built for speed rather than combat. Hidden in its cargo bay was a computer, system loaded with an upgraded version of Grant's virus. You don't have to do this, Blake told her over the radio. Yes, I do, White replied. This is what we do. This is what makes us human. When someone threatens our family, we fight back. White's ship was too small for the Emperor's sensors to detect easily. She flew through the wreckage of the space battle, hiding behind destroyed ships and floating debris. Slowly, carefully, she made her way toward the Imperial throne. The Emperor's ship was like nothing she had ever seen. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Its hull was covered in symbols and decorations that told the story of the Empire's conquests. At its center was a massive weapon that glowed with the power to destroy stars. White found what she was looking for near the ship's communication array, a maintenance port that was designed for repair ships to connect to the vessel's systems. If she could get close enough, she could plug her computer directly into the Emperor's network. The problem was the shields. The Imperial throne was surrounded by an energy barrier that would destroy any ship that touched it. But White had studied the Empire's technology for months. She knew their shields had one weakness. They were designed to stop large objects moving fast. Small objects moving slowly might be able to slip through. White turned off her ship's engines and let it drift toward the massive vessel. She was moving, barely faster than a walking speed, hoping the shields would not recognize her tiny ship as a threat. For 10 terrifying minutes, she drifted through space toward the Emperor's ship. Any moment she expected to be vaporized by defensive weapons or caught by tractor beams. Instead, she passed through the shields like they were not there. I'm in, she whispered into her radio. Working quickly, White connected her computer to the maintenance port. Immediately, Grant's upgraded virus began to spread through the Imperial throne systems. But the Emperor's ship was different from other Empire vessels. Its computers were more advanced with better security. The virus spread slowly, fighting against defensive programs that tried to stop it. White, you need to get out of there. Blake's voice came over the radio. The weapon is almost fully charged. On the bridge of the Imperial throne, Emperor Vexthal watched the Genesis protocol reach full power. In moments, he could fire the weapon and end the rebellion forever. "Target the system's star," he commanded. But when his weapons officer tried to fire, nothing happened. "My Emperor, the targeting system is not responding." Vexthal felt a chill of fear. "What do you mean? Computers are not accepting our commands, Emperor. Something is wrong." The virus had reached the Genesis protocol's control systems. The weapon that could destroy stars was turning against its creators. Instead of targeting the sun, the massive weapon slowly turned toward the Imperial throne itself. "Emergency evacuation," Vexthal screamed. "All personnel to escape pods." But it was too late. The Genesis protocol fired, and the Imperial throne disappeared in a flash of light brighter than the sun. With it died the Emperor, who had ruled for 800 years, and the weapon that could destroy worlds. Lieutenant Karen White's ship was caught in the explosion. She had saved humanity, but she would not live to see the victory. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light. The Emperor was dead. The Genesis protocol was destroyed. The rebellion had won. On world after world, Empire forces laid down their weapons. Some fought on, but without central command. They were quickly defeated by local rebels. President Morrison stood before the cameras once again. But this time he was not in a bunker. He was in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York, surrounded by representatives from every free world in the galaxy. "Today, we established the Galactic Alliance," Morrison announced. "Not an empire built on fear, but a partnership built on respect. Not conquerors and slaves, but equals working together." Dr. Grant had become the Alliance's first science director. Her teams were sharing human technology with every member world while learning from alien sciences. Together they were building things that no single species could have created alone. Captain Blake commanded the Alliance Defense Force, protecting trade routes and keeping the peace. His ships were no longer converted asteroids, but modern vessels built by all the free worlds working together. Engineer Paul Davis led construction teams that were rebuilding not just Earth, but every world damaged by the Empire. New cities rose. From the ashes designed by humans and aliens working side by side, the galaxy was free, but the price had been enormous. The scars would take generations to heal, yet something good had grown from the darkness. For the first time in galactic history, different species were working together as equals. They shared knowledge, resources, and dreams of a better future. In the memorial garden built where New York had once stood, simple stone carried the names of all who had died for freedom. At the top was Lieutenant Karen White's name, along with a message that summed up the human spirit. She said no to tyranny, and the galaxy learned to be free. The humans had kept their promise. When Earth said no, the Empire's worlds had indeed turned to ash.